a long time ago, when we started looking at strings, I had promised that we would later look back at string formatting. So now is the time to look more carefully at how we can structure strings so that it displays nicely and it's easier to program using strings. So here is the first way to pass arguments to a string. So you can use %s and then finish the string with a quote, and then % and pass a tuple. So you see that the content here, John and Cleese, will be put inside of the %s. So his first name is John and the surname is Cleese. So you see how that works. The %s mark points that need to be replaced by the argument that's passed here after the %. So of course, instead of there's no point in doing it this way. I mean, this is you could have just defined the string right away, but instead of using John and Cleese, you could use variable names, and you can start doing more complicated things that way. Okay, so that's one way. Another way is to use the attribute format. So if you have a string here, we can make everything sound ish, and then you start putting curly braces, ish, 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 and then format, and pass as many arguments as there are curly braces, then all those arguments will be used to populate the curly braces. So now we can make everything sound ish, bitterish, piggish, cattish, and fish. Great joke. All right, so this was formatting using implicit positioning, implicit from the position in the arguments here. Now we can also use explicit positioning, and let's look at those examples. So if I use 0, 1, 0, it means take the 0th argument, then the first, and then back to the 0th. So I have abra, cad, abra. So that's using numbers. If you don't use numbers, you get abra, cad for this thing. And you can also even, of course, swap the numbers. So this is saying take the last argument and then the first argument and compose a word out of it. Okay? Now, this will create an error because you have too many curly braces for the number of arguments. And this will also produce an error because you're mixing the access types. You're sometimes using implicit indexing and sometimes using explicit indexing. Now, those things are useful, but not as useful as this one. So if I so let me copy paste first. So I now have a string here, this string, and it serves really as a template if you want, because I'm using curly braces in a few places where I'm saying the name, the date, and the place. And then I use format and I pass some keywords that of course match what is in the template, and I replace the keywords by some values. So the name would be Graham, the date would be January 1941, and the place would be Leicester. And then this just prints Graham was born blah blah blah. So you can use keyword arguments like this, or you can actually use full dictionaries like Graham and John, and then use dot format, and then the notation we've seen before, star star, and then this dictionary name. So this is quite useful to actually do more complicated things with strings. That's one aspect of string formatting, putting in data that you have computed some other way into some little template of a string. Now, here is another way of using string formatting. It's actually to really format, to really do presentation, if you want, of your string. So here I'll start aligning things. So I can align, if you want, to the left, some text which is aligned left here, but I can also align to the right in this way, and I align so that I have 40 characters, so some initial characters are added. And I can also align in the center, and in this way you see it's aligned in the center, and I can even specify a character to use to align. So here I have a centered text surrounded with star, and I align it in the center so that in total I have 70 characters filling with stars, and you can see the result here. And for the same purposes, you can use rjust, ljust, and center, which is probably easier to remember, and you can see the effect here quite directly. And now finally, one other thing you can do with strings is to replace some parts. So let's take a quote and let's replace so this is the quote, and let's replace in the quote film by life, and you see that, well, that's the end of the life. Now here's the meaning of life. And you can also replace the by and well, that's an end of and film. Now here's an meaning of life. Okay, not ideal, but you can also replace the by and, but only replace the first part. So that's an end of the film. Now here's the meaning of life. So that was an example of a replacement, and this is all different ways you can format strings. And there's many more complications. For instance, there's libraries that help you present strings with structure. So if you wanted to present tables of data, you could just use string formatting as well. But I won't go into those details.